Florida's glittering real estate dream just shattered. Miami and Palm Beach home prices have exploded over 70% since 2019, but wages have barely budged. Now, the American system that fueled this frenzy stands accused as the market unravels, families face impossible bills, and Governor DeSantis scrambles for answers. How did paradise become a cautionary tale for the entire country? The full story begins right now. Buyers began pouring into Miami and Palm Beach County in record numbers after 2019. The pandemic's remote work revolution, paired with Florida's pitch as a tax-free haven, turned the region into a magnet for out-of-state movers. New arrivals from New York, California, Illinois, and the Midwest cashed out of expensive markets and brought their windfalls south, often paying above asking price. By 2025, over half of all Palm Beach County home purchases closed as all-cash deals, more than double the national average. In Miami, that share climbed even higher in luxury segments, with nearly 83% of high-end condos selling without a mortgage. The pitch was simple: zero state income tax, sunny weather, and a promise of freedom from pandemic restrictions. Real estate agents reported bidding wars for everything from downtown condos to suburban tract homes. Home values soared. Median single-family prices in Miami jumped over 70% in just 5 years. For many, the dream was funded by cheap money. Mortgage rates hovered near historic lows through 2021, letting buyers lock in payments that felt manageable, even as prices skyrocketed. But this wave of demand didn't come from local wage growth. The region's economy, built on tourism, hospitality, and service work, could never support these prices on its own. Instead, the market's lifeblood was outside cash, relocators, investors, and speculators chasing returns or a new lifestyle. Institutional buyers joined the frenzy, snapping up homes to rent out or flip, further draining inventory and pushing prices out of reach for local families. As migration surged, so did expectations. Developers broke ground on new towers and subdivisions, confident the stream of newcomers would never slow. Yet beneath the surface, the market's foundation was fragile. If the inflow of buyers or the easy money ever dried up, the same forces that fueled the boom could just as quickly disappear, leaving prices and liquidity exposed. For now, the region thrived on an unprecedented influx of capital and optimism, setting the stage for what would happen when sentiment turned. The reality for working families in Miami and Palm Beach County is a widening chasm between what people earn and what it costs to keep a roof overhead. While property values soared, local paychecks barely budged. In hospitality, retail, and healthcare, the backbone of the region's workforce, annual wages often linger below $40,000. Meanwhile, the median home price in Miami hovers above $400,000, and in Palm Beach County, the typical single-family home is even further out of reach. The numbers simply don't add up for most residents. The pain isn't just at the point of sale. As homes were revalued to reflect sky-high market prices, property tax bills exploded. For many longtime owners, annual tax payments jumped by 45% in just a few years. Some Palm Beach families saw their tax bills climb by $3,000, $5,000, or even $6,000 almost overnight. One Boynton Beach homeowner, after a county reassessment, watched their property taxes leap from $15,000 to $91,000 in a single year, a staggering increase that wiped out savings and forced impossible choices. These aren't isolated stories. Across the region, the tax burden is squeezing budgets to the breaking point. The result is a local economy where even middle-class families feel locked out. Renters face their own crisis, with landlords passing on the costs of higher taxes and insurance. For those who managed to buy before the boom, the sense of security has evaporated under the weight of escalating bills. The American promise of stability through homeownership has turned into a source of anxiety and resentment. Each new tax assessment, every notice from the county brings more families to the edge. This affordability crisis is not a fluke or the product of a single bad year. It's the outcome of a system that rewards speculation and outside money while leaving local workers to carry the burden. As property taxes climb and wages lag behind, the gap grows wider, threatening to hollow out communities from the inside. The struggle to keep up is now a daily reality for thousands, setting the stage for the next shock, the crushing cost of simply holding on to a home. After the Surfside condo collapse in 2021, Florida lawmakers scrambled to overhaul building safety and reserve funding rules for condos. The changes began with Senate Bill 4D in 2022, which forced every building above 3 stories and 30 years old to complete a Structural Integrity Reserve Study, SARS, by the end of 2024. That meant hiring engineers, inspecting concrete, plumbing, roofs, and more, then calculating exactly how much money needed to be set aside for future repairs. There was no more waiving reserves for critical structural systems. For thousands of associations, this was a financial earthquake. In 2025, House Bill 913 extended the SARS deadline by a year, but the core demands only grew. Associations now had to keep at least $25,000 in reserves for each major repair item, up from $10,000, and couldn't skip payments except under tight new rules. For many older buildings, especially those that had deferred maintenance or run budgets thin, the reserve shortfall ran into the millions. Boards faced a stark choice: levy massive special assessments on owners, or risk falling out of compliance and losing insurance. Some associations tried to use House Bill 913's 2-year moratorium on reserve payments, but that only bought time for the most urgent repairs. Everything else had to be funded, and soon. The new regime also demanded annual insurance appraisals, stricter financial reporting, and virtual records for every meeting. Owners who had never paid more than a few $100s a month in dues suddenly faced special assessments of $20,000, $50,000, or more. In buildings like Cricket Club in Miami, the bill for delayed repairs topped $60,000 per unit. In Palm Beach, some mid-rise towers issued $10 million in collective assessments, with individual owners scrambling for hardship exemptions or forced to list their homes at steep discounts. Condo boards, often run by volunteers, found themselves managing engineering contracts, legal deadlines, and angry residents on the brink. The pressure to meet reserve thresholds and inspection deadlines collided with the reality of stagnant wages and surging insurance costs. For many, the numbers simply didn't work. As the SARS clock ticked down, the threat of liens, foreclosures, and insurance cancellations grew. The law's intent was safety and transparency. The result, for thousands, was a financial crisis unfolding floor by floor, tower by tower, across Miami and Palm Beach County. Insurance companies once courted Florida's coastal towers, but now they are fleeing in droves. Since 2021, annual premiums for high-rise condos in Miami and Palm Beach County have soared by 40 to 100% each year. In some buildings, owners who paid $4,000 for coverage in 2022 now face bills of $8,000 or more, if they can secure a policy at all. Carriers like Lloyd's and several regional firms have withdrawn completely, leaving entire condo associations scrambling as renewal deadlines pass without offers. For many, the only option left is the state-run Citizens Property Insurance, which itself is raising rates and capping new enrollments. The fallout is immediate and punishing. When an association loses coverage, every mortgage in the building is instantly at risk. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac require proof of insurance to keep loans in good standing. Without it, banks can demand full repayment or force owners into costly lender-placed insurance, which often doubles or triples the premium. Some owners in Palm Beach have opened their mail to find cancellation notices from their insurer and, days later, default warnings from their lender. A growing number of buildings, especially those with deferred maintenance or incomplete reserve studies, are now labeled uninsurable, effectively blacklisted by both insurers and mortgage lenders. The crisis is not limited to the luxury towers on the water. Inland properties have seen 20 to 40% annual premium hikes, and the National Flood Insurance Program has doubled rates in some zones. As costs spiral, boards levy emergency assessments to cover the gap, but many owners simply cannot pay. Stories of retirees cashing out savings, families taking on second jobs, or units dumped at fire sale prices have become routine. In Miami-Dade alone, more than a dozen buildings have lost coverage since 2023, with hundreds of units forced onto the market or into foreclosure. What began as a safety push after Surfside has mutated into a financial cliff. The region's entire housing market now teeters on the availability and affordability of insurance. Without it, homeownership collapses overnight into a tangle of legal threats, forced sales, and lost equity. For thousands across Miami and Palm Beach County, the promise of a secure home has given way to a new reality. One insurance letter is all it takes to lose everything. Private equity giants, flush with pandemic-era profits, had been among the most aggressive buyers in Miami and Palm Beach County. Blackstone, Fundrise, and Invitation Homes poured billions into single-family homes and condos, often paying cash and outbidding locals. By mid-2025, more than half of all Palm Beach County home sales closed without a mortgage. 51% all cash, double the national average. In Miami's luxury segment, the cash share soared above 80%. This tidal wave of investor money pushed prices to record highs, but it also left the market dangerously exposed to shifts in global capital. As soon as signs of market instability appeared, rising inventory, flattening rents, and headlines about insurance chaos, these same institutional players began to retreat. Blackstone quietly halted new acquisitions and started offloading entire portfolios, seeking to lock in gains before values slid further. Internal memos circulated among private equity firms: preserve liquidity, reduce risk, and avoid being caught holding the bag. In private meetings with county officials, they lobbied for tax breaks and regulatory relief, but the message was clear: capital was leaving, fast. The exit wasn't limited to Wall Street. Foreign investors, spooked by headlines about uninsurable towers and special assessments, began pulling back as well. Cash that once flooded the market now sat on the sidelines, waiting for deeper discounts or safer bets. With fewer buyers and more sellers, liquidity dried up almost overnight. Homes that once sparked bidding wars now lingered for weeks, then months, unsold. The speculative exodus triggered a chain reaction, setting the stage for a wave of defaults as flippers and leveraged investors found themselves unable to exit at yesterday's prices. Speculators who once treated Florida's housing market like a casino are now facing a brutal reckoning. Adjustable-rate mortgages, ARMs, became the weapon of choice for thousands of small-time flippers between 2021 and 2023. These loans, tempting with their initial teaser rates as low as 2.5%, let investors pile into properties across Miami, Palm Beach, and especially Cape Coral. But the grace period is over. As ARMs reset in 2025, interest rates have soared to nearly 8%, tripling monthly payments overnight and destroying any hope of profit. In Cape Coral, the fallout is especially severe. Once the hottest market in the country, it's now the worst. Home prices there have dropped for 12 out of the last 13 months. Over 8% of owners owe more than their homes are worth. Neighborhoods that once buzzed with construction now stand littered with for sale signs as flippers try to escape before the next payment comes due. Local banks, who eagerly funded these speculative plays, are now holding emergency meetings, scrambling to unload portfolios packed with underwater homes. Internal emails from at least 2 regional lenders, cited in press reports, describe a rush to de-risk by dumping distressed properties before losses spiral further. Bulk auctions have become routine. Flippers who bet on endless appreciation are forced to accept steep losses or walk away entirely. The mechanical failure is clear. The system that let easy money flow in is now slamming the door shut. As payments spike and prices slide, the market's weakest hands are the first to fold, leaving banks, neighborhoods, and entire cities to pick up the pieces. In a quiet neighborhood of Boynton Beach, the Martinez family sits at their kitchen table, bills spread out like a storm warning. Just 2 years ago, they felt secure, middle class, 2 stable jobs, and a home they had worked a decade to afford. Now, their monthly housing payment is up by $900 in a single year. Insurance premiums alone have jumped to over $7,500 annually, more than doubling since 2022. The property tax bill, once manageable, has ballooned by nearly $4,000. When their condo association announced a special assessment for urgent repairs, the family's emergency fund vanished overnight. Every envelope in the mail brings new dread. The insurance company threatens non-renewal unless they pay in full. The mortgage lender warns that coverage lapses will trigger default. The association's next meeting promises another vote on raising dues. The kids hear their parents whispering about selling, about moving in with relatives, about walking away. The Martinezes aren't alone. Across Miami and Palm Beach County, families who once believed in the promise of homeownership now face a relentless squeeze. Some are forced to list their homes at a loss, unable to keep pace with the triple whammy of taxes, insurance, and assessments. Others drain retirement accounts or take on second jobs, hoping to buy just a little more time. The American system, built on the dream of stability through property, has turned on its own people. For many, the question is no longer how to hold on, but how to survive the next bill. The crisis is no longer abstract. It lives in every kitchen, every sleepless night, every empty savings account. Governor Ron DeSantis found himself at the center of a political storm as the housing crisis deepened. At a tense press conference in Tallahassee, he lashed out at what he called out-of-control property taxes and blamed federal policymakers for ignoring Florida's unique challenges. But behind the soundbites, the governor's own proposals drew fierce scrutiny. His plan to send $1,000 rebate checks to homeowners carried a price tag of $3.5 billion, a number that left budget analysts and local officials alarmed. County leaders warned that eliminating or slashing property taxes would gut funding for schools, police, and emergency services, since property taxes make up the backbone of local budgets. DeSantis doubled down, calling property taxes rent to the government and urging lawmakers to back his push for sweeping tax relief. Critics, including members of his own party, accused him of playing politics with the crisis. They argued the rebates would mostly benefit wealthier homeowners, leaving renters and working families with nothing but rising rents and shrinking services. The rhetoric grew sharper as the market slide accelerated. DeSantis publicly questioned the reliability of real estate market data, hinting that the Miami Association of Realtors was massaging the numbers to avoid panic. Insiders alleged that MLS data was being smoothed. Multi-million-dollar luxury sales were separated from median price pools, and only unsold inventory was quietly reclassified. Official press releases painted a picture of stability, even as internal MLS data showed inventory up 30% and prices down as much as 13% in key zip codes. The governor's frustration spilled into policy meetings, where he dismissed legislative proposals for targeted relief as half measures. He demanded bold action, but offered little detail on how to close the multi-billion-dollar gap his rebates would create. For families facing foreclosure and communities bracing for budget cuts, the spectacle in Tallahassee felt like a leadership crisis, a system unraveling in real time, with no one willing to take responsibility. By mid-2025, the median home price in Florida had fallen to $412,000, down sharply from its pandemic peak. Over 70% price growth in Miami since 2019 outstripped local wages, while property taxes soared 45% for many families. Regulatory changes after the Surfside tragedy, including Senate Bill 4D and House Bill 913, brought costly inspections and insurance hikes, premiums up as much as 100% on the coast. Institutional investors exited, all-cash deals surged, and adjustable-rate mortgage resets pushed many toward foreclosure. Governor Ron DeSantis' tax rebate proposal and public statements could not reverse the mounting losses. Yet, some data, like the full extent of investor withdrawals and unpublished MLS figures, remains out of public view. What is clear? The crisis was not the result of a single event, but the failure of a system that prioritized speculation over stability. As Florida's turmoil continues, it stands as evidence of deeper vulnerabilities in the broader American housing model.